Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Vallabha सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गो गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, नवद्वीप धाम की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय, गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Mother.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, you're welcome for today's class. How are you doing? Nice to see you.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm surviving by your mercy. Hare Krishna.
All of us surviving, isn't it?
And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well, Jai.
So I put the verse on the screen, so we can start, please.
Jai. Let's see here. Perfect. So we have Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 12, Text 26. First, of course. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Rajarsinam Janayita Shashta Chotpatagaminam Nigrahita Kaleresha Bhuvo Dharmasya Karanat. Translation: This child will be the father of kings, who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The wisest man in the world is a devotee of the Lord. The sages are called wise men, and there are different types of wise men for different branches of knowledge. Unless, therefore, the king or the head of the state is the wisest man, he cannot control all types of wise men in the state. In the line of royal succession in the family of Maharaj Yudhishthir, all the kings without exception were the wisest men of their times. And so also it is foretold about Maharaj Parikshit and his son Maharaj Janmejaya, who was yet to be born. Such wise kings can become chastisers of upstarts and uprooters of Kali, or quarrelsome elements. As will be clear in the chapters ahead, Maharaj Parikshit wanted to kill the personified Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow, the emblem of peace and religion. The symptoms of Kali are 1. Wine, 2. Women, 3. Gambling, and 4. Slaughterhouses. Wise rulers of all states should take lessons from Maharaj Parikshit in how to maintain peace and morality by subduing the upstarts and quarrelsome people who indulge in wine, illicit connection with women, gambling, and meat eating supplied by regularly maintained slaughterhouses. In this age of Kali, regular license is issued for maintaining all of these different departments of quarrel. So how can they expect peace and morality in the state? The state fathers, therefore, must follow the principles of becoming wiser by devotion to the Lord, by chastising the breaker of discipline, and by uprooting the systems of quarrel as mentioned above. If we want blazing fire, we must use dry fuel. Blazing fire and moist fuel go ill together. Peace and morality can prosper only by the principles of Maharaj Parikshit and his followers. Translation once again. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. And so, of course, we need our Mangalacharana in order to invoke all of our wonderful spiritual acharyas. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be with you on a day like today. Start of a week. In this new year, on a day celebrated in New York and in America as Martin Luther King Day. So thank you for allowing me to be here. I feel as though it's incredibly important that we come together in times like this and we discuss with one another, we hear from one another, we talk about some realizations, have some realizations, figure this whole material world thing out just a little bit at a time. So this verse, super interesting. There's so much packed into it. One, I want to remind all of us that we're talking about like astrology. So sometimes we hear so many different things and they get a bit of a bad rap. within spiritual contexts, within bhakti, within ISKCON or a greater Hare Krishna movement. And astrology is one of those things that can go either way. Astrology, you get people, it's like, oh, we don't believe in any of that. We don't even need it. Srila Prabhupada said we don't need it. It's fine. But then also, I like to point out that we live our lives by a calendar based on the movements of the moon. We are conducting our spiritual lives based on this calendar. And we need a lunar calendar. Otherwise, it's like, well, how do we know when Ekadashi is? How do we know when this date is coming? How do we know when that date is coming? How do we know when to honor our spiritual teachers and acharyas without this calendar based on the movements of the moon? But astrology, we don't really need it. So I think that, it behooves us to really look at things in terms of balance and in terms of moderation. So we do need it. And there are sages looking at the astrological forecast of Parikshit Maharaj's entire life. Right? Yudhishthir went and he's asking at the very beginning, okay, all of you great seers and teachers, tell me, will this boy be like everybody else in our family line? He's going to them, begging them, asking them for astrology. And Srila Prabhupada says, real astrologers were able to see the trajectory of somebody's life. So it's not that it's not important. It's not that we don't need it. Everything in moderation. And that would be akin to saying, doctors don't matter, we don't need them. But, it can sound fine to say that until there's an ailment. And then usually what happens is most of us go and seek out a doctor of some sort, some way, somehow, whether Ayurvedic doctor, whether a homeopathic doctor, a naturalist doctor, whatever it is, we go and we seek out some help. So I thought it was quite interesting to really just take a moment and look at the fact that we're doing something like this was normal for them. But nowadays, it's like polar opposites. It can be unprecedented for us, and sometimes we hear about people, oh, they went to an astrologer. Oh, but do we even need it? I'm like, well, first, let's consider the source. Yudhishthir properly went to a source that he trusted. He went to sages who had been sages and family advisors for generations. He trusted them. And likewise, when we think about politics, when we think about political figureheads, usually the spiritually minded people take a stance where it's like, we don't like them at all. Nobody likes the political figureheads. Nobody really likes the government. Everybody is discontent when it comes to the government. Nobody's having a good time. It's all full of materialistic people filled with a garbage mindset. But here we have Yudhishthir Maharaj, all of his brothers, Maharaj Parikshit, soon in the future, Maharaj Janmejaya. This is the government. This is the government. So at some point, there needs to be some prayer, right? Like, I feel like the things that we don't like the most in life, that gives us an indicator of where the most prayer needs to happen. Ever think about that? Like the things that we wind up fighting about the most, the areas in which we disagree with one another, even in our daily lives, the areas in which we disagree the most, I feel like that's a strong indicator that particular section, that place needs the most prayer. Because that is the only thing that is going to bring us back to that equalizing vision. So, if nobody likes the government, then there needs to be a lot of prayer. And it may not be that we take matters into our own hands, but someone godly minded needs to, right? As we see in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, somebody had to rule. And Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna specifically was helping the Pandavas because he wanted that his devotees should be in charge. He wanted that his devotees should be the authority of the time. And that was what made the difference between them or the Kurus. Right? It wasn't just that, oh, Arjuna was a better archer than Karna, or this person was a better general than that person. It could have been a toss-up in terms of ability. What separated them from everybody else was the fact that they were devotees of Krishna. That's what pleased Krishna, and that's what Krishna wanted. He wanted that his devotees should somehow be the authorities. And that for me is huge. Because here, even in this purport, we have the very first sentence: the wisest man in the world is a devotee of the Lord. And we also have to kind of look at that in terms of being really, really honest with one another and with each other. Because it could be really easy to start thinking, like, I'm a devotee of Krishna. I've got everything else that I need. And now I can go and propagate my own mind and my own thought processes as the wisest that there is, because the wisest man is a devotee of Krishna. Done. Boom. Finished. Mic drop. So we really have to look at this in a holistic picture. And I feel as though there's such a stress. Srila Prabhupada stresses it subtly, overtly: balance, moderation. What is it that we're really doing with this knowledge, right? The wisest person is a devotee of Krishna. But why? Because we're constantly anchoring ourselves in these teachings, constantly calling out for Krishna's mercy, for Krishna's compassion, for Krishna's guidance. Arjuna is on a battlefield, but the first thing he does is he says, okay, Krishna, I have no control over this. I have no control over my own body. I need help. Maharaj Parikshit, even though he becomes one of the greatest rulers ever, he's constantly calling out to Krishna for guidance. And then when he's in a position where now he's reached the end of his life, he's become old in the Bhagavatam definition of the word. Prahlad Maharaj says, old is relative. Old simply means how close we are to death. So it didn't matter Maharaj Parikshit's physical age at the time. At 7 days away, he was one of the oldest people in that assembly. Old simply meant how close he was, and he was super close. So when he gets to a position where he realizes that he is close to death, he doesn't simply say, well, you know what? Now is the time to charge forward and tick all of the things off of my bucket list. I'm going to go on every vacation that I ever wanted to go on. I'm going to go cliff diving and skydiving, and I'm going to jump from flower airplanes, because that is going to give me the thrill and the rush of life. What he did was, in order to make the most of those moments, when he's really looking at that tunnel, was to go and ask some of those same sages that knew the astrological forecast for his life. He went and asked those same sages, okay, now what? Now what? And all of those sages similarly were asking other sages in the future, what is the duty of a person about to die? What is their obligation now? What do we do? Where do we turn? What happens to those people? What should their focus be? And so now that Maharaj Parikshit has been ruling, has tried to conquer Kali, has tried to subdue these upstarts and this quarrelsome nature, now he's looking and saying, okay, now what? Is this what I'm meant to do for the rest of my days, is to just fight back this entire thing? Or what will give peace to my soul in this moment? And so I really, really, really enjoy that at the end, he didn't have to keep arguing all the time. He could stop arguing and make a new space for his mind to just be at ease. And his mind was most at ease, hearing, relishing, speaking even about the glories of our most supreme person. Speaking about how the supreme person absolutely can and will save us no matter what mistakes happen, no matter where we find ourselves, no matter the wrong turns we decide to take in life. This introduction to all of Srimad Bhagavatam is so incredibly fascinating and interesting. And this purport can be so amazingly triggering. You know, you have the you have the symptoms of Kali are 1, wine, 2, women, 3, gambling, and 4, slaughterhouses. And if we stop reading then, that can kind of feel like, wait a second, but women are present every age, like from time immemorial. You can't, like, unless you are Brahma, you know. And actually, I want to say unless you are Brahma, but there have been so many people who have somehow gotten children in so many varieties of different ways. There's a clump of grass, or in a pot, or out of a fire, or any, like this, that, the third, all of them. But um, it can't just be like, I like that Srila Prabhupada then expounds on what he means by it, right? He expounds on what happens. We have this illicit connection, right? This illicit connection with women, and not just, it's not just that. What I kind of feel like is there needs to be a translation for the purport translation in a very long way. What does this actually mean? And the reason I'm kind of zeroing in on this one is because everything else kind of seems very cut and dry, black and white, right? Everybody can see the effects of how this misuse, this imbalanced use of wine can affect an entire family, an entire country. We have people dedicated to it now saying this, you know, but this is a disease, right? You look at it and it's like alcoholism is a disease, and everybody's like, you should know it. Everybody get it in your minds that this person is not operating under the proper mindset if they are gripped by such an addiction. Right? And then we have scientists dedicated to all of these different things, how gambling is an addiction, how sometimes meat eating can adversely affect not just the body, but the mind. Looking at how all these different things you start to ingest the anxiety and the fear and all the things that happen with animals and slaughterhouses. You have big singers saying things like, if there were glass windows on slaughterhouses, nobody would ever, I feel like all the rest of those seem very self-explanatory. But now this illicit connection with women, I feel like really it can be triggering to everybody. Be triggering to women, because then they think, well, what is my purpose spiritually then? Then you've got men and all this stuff, and everybody's trying to figure out what is happening here. But I think that there's a certain outlook. If we look at Maharaj Parikshit's time, if we look at Srila Prabhupada's time, if we look at all of these times of antiquity, and he speaks about how women are to be protected. And sometimes we can feel as though this becomes suffocating because of imbalance. But in the most balanced state, what happens is you have warriors, politicians, administrators. You have this Kshatriya class of people. And there were rules of etiquette. And they were in charge of disseminating these rules of etiquette to the rest of society. And so even with Brahmins, it doesn't matter. Even with Brahmins, if you had some adverse, some opposite, some negative interaction with a certain woman, kind of didn't even matter what status of society she held, it could easily end in your destruction. Just ask Indra. And it didn't matter who you were, from the king of heaven on down to any other regular mortal. These interactions carried heavy consequences. And so sometimes what we lose are the heavy consequences. And we simply hear of, this is a symptom of Kali Yuga. So what I think happens is, it's like these interactions between power plays. You have people who are stronger or considered stronger, and then people who are considered weaker or their strength is in a different capacity. Right? You've got people who are considered more intelligent and less intelligent. You've got all of these things, but it's really, these strengths are used in a different capacity. But when you have people who are exerting, right, that strength in a forceful manner over somebody else, this oppressive nature, that's when things get problematic. These are the things that cause devtas and celestials to go and run and seek the supreme help. When we see, even in the later on, we'll see Maharaj Parikshit is going to have a conversation with a bull and a cow. This bull and this cow are not just normal, ordinary bulls and cows. This is Dharmaraj, the lord of supreme occupation. And you have Bhumi, who is the actual presiding deity, the goddess of the earth, in the form of a cow. So now you have these two stalwart, these two pillars of all of creation, and they're being mercilessly tortured. This is kind of what I feel is encapsulated when we see that these symptoms of Kali Yuga, this illicit connection with women, it's not just an illicit connection with women, but this tendency toward oppression, this tendency towards this misuse of power, this torturing of people or entities all around that we consider weaker, lesser. This mindset of considering others to be weaker or lesser. And therefore, they should be able to do whatever I want them to do. Or they should be able to do whatever I tell them to do, whatever I can make them do. When we start forcing our agenda on others, this is that quarrelsome nature that I feel like is so prevalent. And, I have often said that, we think it's a symptom of Kali Yuga only. But there were some big, big demons doing some big, big things in previous ages. In Satya Yuga, there was a time, there were two demons, and they had effectively killed off all of the Kshatriyas of the time. The Brahmins were left without any protection, and so they killed off the Brahmins too. And then the Vaishyas and the Sudras, they ran away out of fear. And this is in Satya Yuga. And then they're calling upon the Lord saying, help. This is an imbalance now. Society is falling into disrepair. We need help. So it's not that bad things were not happening in Satya Yuga, in Treta Yuga, in Dwapar Yuga. Bad things were happening. That's a symptom of the material world. What I feel is interesting in Kali Yuga is that now you don't even have to be a big, big demon. Everybody feels entitled to oppress somebody else. Everybody. You could be just the neighbor. And there's this idea, this quarrelsome idea, this entitlement that leads to this oppression. Doesn't matter who you are. The parents can oppress the children now, and they're going to exert their will on the children. The teachers are going to exert their will on the students. Anybody, everybody. So that's what I feel is so interesting about Kali Yuga. Not that oppression wasn't happening before, and it absolutely was, and the consequences were dire, but now it's not that there's a hierarchy. It's not that, that's the king and he has this control and you hope that the king wouldn't do it. Now it's everybody, not just the government. It's everybody. So this is, I feel like this is what Maharaj Parikshit was trying to keep at bay. And this is what the sages of Naimisharanya and others were also trying to keep at bay, because they could see it happening. It's like when people are walking down the street and now all of a sudden it's like when we hear about the story of Lord Ram, and when Ram gets back to Ayodhya after such a difficult time, in the forest, 14 years, battling Ravan, getting his wife back, all these things. And then there's a fisherman who can make some decree about Sita's chastity. And then somehow we get to be listening to the fisherman, right? A random fisherman can pass judgment on the ruling class of people, let alone that they are the supreme personalities of Godhead, right? But now this fisherman can pass this judgment. We start to see where there's a little bit of a breakdown. And through yugas and yugas, this breakdown becomes more prevalent and more prevalent and more prevalent, where now anybody can say anything and it's considered truth, right? Anybody's passing any judgment and it's considered now, we listen to that person. Now, no one is considering the source. This is why it becomes, all of these things become problematic. So now when we hear Srila Prabhupada might say something like, it's okay, the astrology is not, it's not necessary. We have to consider who he was talking to and why. Because now anybody can become an astrologer. And in these previous times where Maharaj Parikshit was, this astrology was an in-depth science where people would study for the length of people's lifetimes, hundreds and hundreds of years, and then it gets passed down, and then you learn mantras which start to unlock these scientific aspects of the movements of every single planet. Now, we can just Google it, and anybody is certified. I mean, you could go get certified on Udemy. You get a course on iTunes. You go to your app store. You get your course. You go for 30 days. Boom. You now are certified Jyotish for the low price of $250. And so this is, it's now, your skill is now based on how much money you have. No longer based on the character and integrity, what's happening inside, which we are asking, begging, right? Yudhishthira is begging. I did all of these millions of people that died in this war, it was not in vain, right? Because he's constantly having that playing in the back of his mind. Yudhishthira Maharaj was not a king who was separated from what was going on with his people. When there was a war, he was there on the battlefield. When there were consequences, he was the one that felt them in his soul. So he's looking, saying, all of these millions of people that died and gave their lives so that now I'm king. This is not going in vain, is it? We didn't give birth to a monster, did we? Because all of our hopes and dreams are riding on this child. So will he be able to somehow curb what we're seeing happening? Because Yudhishthira Maharaj is seeing a whole bunch of ill omens already. He's seeing things happening that were not happening before. People aren't caring anymore about the respect given to their elders. And the elders aren't caring anymore about the future of their children. He's watching all of these separations begin, and he's thinking, this is not only weird, but sad. He's looking and he's saying, animals aren't even acting with each other like they used to. Nobody has any regard anymore for this person's mental state, this person's soul, what might be good for this person's soul, what might be good for them emotionally. I was reading, and when Krishna would come and visit the Pandavas, he would ask Yudhishthira, is everything well in your kingdom? But he would also ask, are the people feeling protected? Are they feeling calm in their minds and in their hearts? Are they feeling peaceful? That was huge for me, that the Supreme Person would come, and it's not just like, are your treasuries filled? Do you have all the wealth? But the king was responsible for the mindset of the people. And if everybody was simply in anxiety, this was something that spoke to the competency of the king. Krishna himself was held responsible once upon a time by a Brahmin. This Brahmin, He has lost children as soon as they're born. They're born, the child dies. And this Brahmin was filled to capacity with grief. This Brahmin also happened to live in Dwarka. And so this Brahmin marched to the gates of the palaces of Dwarka, where Maharaj Ugrasena was and where Krishna and Balaram and all of the Yadus were. And he would stand outside and effectively have a one-man protest. Right? In lieu of picket signs, he had his voice and he would yell at the top of his lungs, "What kind of rulers are you? I've lost child after child after child, and now you've done nothing about it. My mind and my heart are in anxiety. My wife is in anxiety. All of us are in anxiety. My whole family, none of us can bear to go through this again. What are you going to do about it? No one has been able to save my children. What kind of kings are you?" Now today, we would think that was completely ludicrous. Right? Now today, the king, if somebody has a miscarriage somewhere, one person, the president is not thinking, you know what? It's my responsibility to go and figure out and help this person in their daily life. The president, the king, the prime minister is thinking, your daily life is not my problem. Right? The first thing to go is my responsibility to your daily life and your daily concerns. Your mental health is not my responsibility. But 5,000 years ago in Krishna's time, it absolutely was the king's responsibility. So now Krishna is taken to task, even though he was not the official ruler of Dwarka. Everyone knew, even though Maharaj Ugrasena was the official ruler of Dwarka, everybody knew who to go to. So now they're asking Krishna, Balaram, you have competent children, everything. Nobody can save this Brahmin's children? The Brahmins are so dear to you. Arjuna steps in and he says, no problem. I'll be the one to protect your children. This Brahmin says, you're a fool. Why should I put my faith in you? With what authority do you say this? See that? Now this Brahmin is checking the source. Something that a lot of us don't do now. Now in Kali Yuga, you hear one thing off the internet and it's truth. Has to be. We stop considering the source. So let's try and write that, make a mental note, write it down. Let's remember step 1, to consider the source. So this Brahmin says, who are you to make these claims? When Krishna, Balaram, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, none of them could protect my children. Who are you? And Arjuna says, I am not Krishna, nor am I Balaram, nor am I Pradyumna or Aniruddha. But I am the disciple of Dronacharya. I am a great devotee of Lord Shiva. Now, some of us might think this sounds like a recipe for disaster. Because Krishna, is the Supreme Person. So how, as friend of the Supreme Person, how do you now say, look, I'm not Krishna or Balaram, okay, as though you might be able to do something that they couldn't do. Nor am I Krishna's son Pradyumna, nor his grandson Aniruddha, these are all expansions of the Chaturvyuhas, of Vishnus, maintainers of the earth and all of creation. But Arjuna's claim to fame is that he's not any of those. So now, as a person reading this, I'm always thinking, is that really the argument that we want to make about how we're better equipped for this situation? But sure, let's let him finish. Okay. It says, I'm a great devotee of Lord Shiva, and I've pleased him by gaining his very own weapon. Don't worry, I will be the one to protect your child. He goes, he makes a fortress of arrows to protect this house. Does everything he can. And as soon as the child is born, the child begins to cry. And now everybody's a little bit hopeful because that's never happened before. Usually the child is born and then they're dead already. But now this child is crying. And then all of a sudden the child disappears. Gone. And the Brahmin is furious. I was a fool to put my faith in the bragging of Arjuna, who is no better than a child when compared to Krishna, Balaram, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Ugrasena, Vasudeva, all of these great stalwart generals, all of these wonderful warriors, and I still put my words, my faith in the words of, this is the Brahmin's words, not mine now, a eunuch like Arjuna. Calls him impotent, calls him a whole bunch of names. To hell with his bow. To hell with all of his arrows. What was I thinking? Right? That little bit of misplaced faith. And so now Arjuna, he had made big claims. Huge claims. And he also said before then, he's like, if I can't protect your child, I'll enter into fire. I don't know why he made that claim, but he did. So now Arjuna is gathering up firewood and kindling. And Krishna comes, oh, my friend, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? And Arjuna says, well, I made the claim, and now the consequences are upon me. So I said I would enter into fire, and I can't protect the child. Arjuna did. He looked. He searched everywhere he could throughout this entire creation. Couldn't find the child. So he says, after putting in such a good effort, I am now going to enter into fire. This was the gravity that Kshatriyas faced. Right? This is the gravity that the government faced. Not only was the government not sitting somewhere saying, look, your personal life means nothing to me, but they were so involved in the personal lives of the citizens that they were overseeing that if something went wrong, they took the consequences personally upon themselves. That for me is huge. So, one of these symptoms of Kali Yuga, one is that we no longer consider the source. And two, that we have kind of removed ourselves from all accountability, from all responsibility. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said that loving relationships and relationships in general mean that we are responsible and accountable. And that was very, very, very big for me. Because in your life, you can go through a situation where you go and you get into a relationship, and then the person at some point says, you can't depend on me to make you happy. Your happiness has to be brought about by you. I cannot be held responsible for your happiness. And my thought was, wait, but does that still hold true if you're responsible for making me upset? Like, I didn't get upset on my own. Like, if I was by myself and then I was upset, then yes, I would be responsible for turning that around. But if you're also the person responsible for the upset causing, should you really be able to step back and say your happiness is not my responsibility? So I feel as though this symptom of Kali Yuga is that we are taking ourselves out of the realm of being held responsible and or accountable. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj went on to say that in order to have loving relationships, and not even just romantic ones, but loving relationships with everybody, we should think about that responsibility and that accountability. We should think about what we're saying and how it's affecting somebody else. And sometimes if we are in a leadership position, then yes, tough love is necessary. But also sometimes we should be thinking about the weight and the gravity, the consequences of our words and actions on somebody else. So sometimes an outcome of a relationship is a child. So we need to be ready and willing to be responsible and accountable for the product of that relationship. But sometimes the product of that relationship is because of something that I've said. Just thinking about my own situation, my own self, this person's mental and emotional health has now taken a toll. Was that necessary? And am I actually holding myself accountable for that? As parents, are we looking at the children and thinking, okay, Now, something that I might say, something that I might do, is going to affect them, possibly for the rest of their lives. Can I hold myself responsible and accountable for that? Can I look at a child and then say, you know what, maybe I could have done such and such better? Can I then have a deep relationship with this junior person to say, you know what, because I love you and because we have a deep relationship, if there's something that is actually genuinely making you uncomfortable, and not just like, I want ice cream, you can't have ice cream, and now the child's like, you know what, I'm triggered. That we understand. But something really, really deep, can we hear from the child later and say, maybe I could have done that better? It is possible. And I know it's possible because my mom does this often. My mom now looks at her grown-up children and says, I've tried my best just to be your mom, but if there's something that has deeply affected you and has deeply changed you not for the better, for the worst, let me know, because if there's something I could have done better, I've wanted to build a place where we can serve. And I'm like, Mom, no. The times when I got in trouble, I was definitely supposed to get in trouble. Okay, yes. No, this couldn't have been done better. But it does open up a much more loving relationship. It does open up a much more Krishna conscious relationship, a place where I can say, you know what, I did struggle with this. I did struggle with this. And my mom is such a humble person where she can look back and then say, well, that wasn't my intention at all. When I said whatever it was that I said, that was never my intention. My intention was always just to love you. So thinking about leaders actually being responsible and accountable, we had more of it 5,000 years ago. We have so much less of it now. And if we think that we're not leaders, every single one of us absolutely are in some way. In our lives, we find ourselves in the position of leaders. So one of the things is that we have to be ready to be responsible. We have to be ready to be held accountable lovingly, if we want loving relationships. So Arjuna says, I'm holding myself accountable. I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to jump into fire. Krishna says, but this is not necessary. He says, but I already said it. And now people are talking about me. And there's one line that is in Krishna book that I love in this pastime. Krishna says, don't worry. Just come with me. I want to show you something. And I promise you that the people who are currently defaming us, we will once again establish our spotless fame. Krishna put himself in the boat with Arjuna unnecessarily. Krishna didn't make those claims and promises. But what he says is, don't worry, come with me. And the very same people who are speaking badly about us will soon reestablish our spotless fame. They'll be the same people who will establish our fame. That for me, that's my person. That's my supreme person. He doesn't say, you're on your own. You've gotten yourself into this mess. You had no business trying to be me. Right? Or saying that you were somehow better than me. And haven't we all done that? We've gotten ourselves into a fine mess in this material world. Saying, I can handle it. I could do this better than Krishna, Balaram, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. I could rule over my life way better than the Supreme Person. What do I need this for? Krishna doesn't berate Arjuna for saying, you never should have said that, bro. Like, he doesn't even say, you know what, that's a bad idea. He just says, he's like, oh, don't worry. Come with me. This hell that you're about to put yourself through is unnecessary. Come with me. Krishna doesn't make us handle anything alone. Not only does he not make us handle anything alone, he's going to take care of the situation that we put ourselves in. He's going to fix the situation, but he's also going to say, but the same people who are defaming you are defaming me. What? How wonderful is a friend like that? You hear about fair weather friends. And when the fame is there and they're like, yes, all the fame, your fame is my fame. But when the defamation is there, the friend usually is like, you're on your own. That was that person. They said that. I didn't say that. And I have done it. There are people who, when the kirtan is great, I'm like, yes, they're my crew. These are my people. And then when they say something off and weird, I'm like, that's them. Don't put me in that box. I'm good. Krishna is the complete opposite. Krishna's like, nope, we're in the box. We're in the box in the good times. We're in the box in the bad times. Both of us are here together. We are on this boat. And Krishna's not abandoning the ship. Because if it were me, and this was my best friend saying, look, I'm not him, okay? He couldn't save your kids. I'm going to do it. No problem. And then when the friend can't do it, I'm usually somewhere like sipping tea, like, I thought you said you were better. But Krishna gets in, rolls up his sleeves and says, no problem, I got this. And then he takes Arjuna on an adventure to the ends of the universe, quite literally. They have to go to the ends of the universe. And then they get to the covering of the universe, which is pitch black, completely dark. No one can see anything. Arjuna is uneasy. The horses are uneasy. Krishna has to bring out his Sudarshan chakra and relight the way. And then he brings him to the very abode of Lord Vishnu. This is unseen, unheard of. They get there with Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu says, I took the children, all of them. You could have never found them because I took them. And I kind of orchestrated this entire thing just because I wanted to see the both of you. Thanks for visiting. Now, Arjuna never could have figured this mystery out on his own. And there needed to be a moment of surrender. But that moment of surrender could have only come after Arjuna really acknowledged that, well, I followed through with my plan. My plan stunk. Like there was, he tried it. And Krishna let him try it. Just like we've got our plans. And that surrender sometimes doesn't happen until we've exhausted all of our plans and realized our plan stinks. And then Krishna comes in, he says, I've been here all along. Just kind of waiting. But unless and until that moment where you decide you want to turn and say, okay, I've already got the lay of the land and my plan stinks. I need some help. That moment, Arjuna was going to throw himself into a fire. It was, make no mistake about it, this is a moment of despair again. And as far as I know, this is kind of after the other Kurukshetra moment of despair. So Arjuna has many, many moments of despair. And in those moments, he turns towards his best friend. Sometimes his best friend has to come and get him. In this case, his best friend's like, whoa, friend, what are we doing? We don't need to end the whole thing. Let's take a step back and really think about this. He's like, I've thought about it. I've done everything I could. Now here's the responsibility and the accountability. Nothing else to do. Got to enter into fire. When Arjuna thought that he was not going to be able to avenge the death of his son Abhimanyu, similarly, he was thinking, you know what? This is it. The unimaginable has happened. Him having to suffer the loss of his 16-year-old son. So when we look at the lives of these great personalities, Maharaj Parikshit, whose life is under a microscope for us, even within this verse, and I was just talking about this does not mean that bad things won't happen. That's the side effect of the material world. Bad things are going to happen. Now we have to figure out what in the world to do with those bad things. So Arjuna is sitting on a battlefield, well, kind of off the side now, thinking, how can I, 16? He's just at the beginning of all of the amazing things he was supposed to do. 16? I can't. And so similarly, he thought, yeah, that's it. I'm jumping into a fire. Krishna's like, wait a second. Give me a chance to turn this around. One of the reasons that Krishna gives is he's like, if I let you do this, what will be said about how I treat my devotees? If I let you go down like this, if I let you fail, what will the world say about how I treat my people? That was always heavy for me. And any time I've ever had those soul-crushing, depressing moments, or those moments filled with anxiety, and those moments where you really, really come face to face with the thought that I don't want to be here anymore, those are the moments where Krishna speaks to Arjuna and says, if I let you do this, if I let your story end like this, what will be said about how I treat my devotees? Sanatana Goswami, in the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had an agonizing skin disease. Open sores and wounds, and they were dripping with pus, and the smell was horrendous. Everything was bad. And Sanatana Goswami thought, I can't do anything else. I've tried to tolerate. I have tried to be humble. I have tried to do everything I could. And I cannot live with this disease. So better I go to Puri during the time of Rath Yatra and throw myself under the chariot wheels and end my life than to live with this issue. Any of us ever been there? Feel like you have whatever issue it is, mentally, physically, emotionally, and you're thinking, I can't do this. I have prayed. I've tried to do everything. He reaches Puri. And he comes in contact with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. And he doesn't say anything about what his plans are. He hasn't revealed his mind to anybody. But that particular day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is full of anxiety. And he just begins speaking. Haridas, you tell him our friend is a criminal. Haridas is, what are we saying? This Sanatan, he's thinking he's going to go and end his own life. But what he's not considering is that life, it belongs to me. He surrendered to me and now his life is mine. So this is criminal activity. He wants to take away my property. Haridas, he won't listen to me, but maybe he'll listen to you. You tell him that this is immoral. You tell him that his life is not his anymore. Those are the things. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pleading with one of his very own people, your life doesn't belong to you anymore. It's mine. And if I let you do this, then what will be said about how I treat my devotees? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells me, he's like, I've got so much more for you. I have so much more for you to do. So if we are at those moments where we feel bereft of the association of Krishna, if we feel as though Krishna has left us, and we feel those moments of deep despair where it's like, I've got nothing left, that's it. What will be said about how Krishna treats his people? And if we feel we're in the midst of those situations, then the story must not be over. It feels uncomfortable, like it's the end, but it must not be over. Because I've seen what Krishna does with his people. He's got so much more to do through us, for us, than that one moment in the dark. Now, I say one moment, and that one moment will probably come many times. If we see anything from Arjuna's life, it's that one moment of despair, that one moment of, I can't do this anymore, I'm giving up my life. It came several times. So if we feel like, okay, but yesterday I got through it and now that moment is here again, you're not alone. Okay? Because This happens. It's natural. Material world side effect. Just like, and I know I've said this before, right? You take a certain medication, you know there are side effects. That's right. You have an allergic reaction. You take a Benadryl and you know you're going to be drowsy for the next week. Material world side effects. These moments, these dark moments are going to come. Probably more than once. Probably more than 100 times. But we should be able to cling hard to those moments where Krishna says, but if I let your story end like this, what will be said about how I treat my people? Just come with me. And the same people who are currently smearing mud all over our name will be the very same ones to establish our spotless fame. Our. Us and Krishna. It's always us and Krishna. So I try to remember when I wake up, we woke up. It's me and Krishna. We are going through a tough day, but it's me and Krishna. We are living through the cloudiness and the snow and all the stuff and the cold and the discomfort, but it's always me and Krishna. There are two birds in one tree, but that one bird who's observing never leaves. That one bird never says, wow, this tree is on fire. I should get out of here. That bird never says, I'm out. You're on your own. Figure out your own way home. That bird says, I will always be here. All it takes, the minute you turn and you say, hey, could you lead the way? The bird's like, I was just waiting. Let's go. Can we go? There's one prayer, and I'll kind of end with this. There's one prayer from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that I have been kind of reciting for a few weeks, and it's been on my mind for a few months. And then, nothing is coincidence, because I chose a lecture to listen to from my Guru Maharaj, Radhanath Swami, at random. And it happened to be the same verse that he was speaking about. So Krishna begins to reciprocate. This verse is funny. I was reciting it just before this lecture. So we have Canto 3, Chapter 25. And starting from text 7 all the way to text 11. So 3, 25, 7 to 11. But the beginning one really struck me months ago, and I thought, this is something I need in my life. It's a conversation between Devahuti, who is a princess and a queen and the wife of a Brahmin, and she's also the mother of Kapila Dev, who also happens to be an incarnation of the Supreme Person. Devahuti says, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. That verse caught me. We ever get to a point where you feel like, I am so sick of this. I'm sick of my mind saying things. I'm sick of my mind leading me in different places. I'm sick of this idea that keeps coming back that I've got it all under control. I'm sick of it. And I thought that was just like, a modern thing to say. But no. Moms from time immemorial have been sick and tired. Okay? So you could be the mother of God. Doesn't matter. She is saying, she's like, I'm sick of this disturbance caused by my material senses. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this. And what happens is, she has served her husband for a very long time. And what happens is her husband leaves. And she's feeling distraught at heart. She's feeling like, what do I have left? I've served this person. I've given everything to this person. I've done everything I could. And the goal was now they leave me. They go to the forest and I'm supposed to transcend to what? What? Where am I transcending to? My whole life I've been told this is your dharma. This is your situation. This is what you do. You serve your husband, whatever he needs, no problem. And everything will be mapped out. She's like, well, now how's it mapped out? What does this map look like? And so I kind of thought, I thought I was the only person who's like, I'm so sick of this. I'm sick of you people and your differing opinions. I'm sick of the way they argue. I'm sick of the lack of compassion. I'm sick of the way we treat each other. But really what I'm sick of is this runaround. I'm sick of this rodeo that my material senses are taking me on. And that verse gave me so much hope, because we're not alone in that thinking. This is not contrary to our spiritual nature to think, okay, I'm seeing all of this around me and I'm sick of it. But what does she do? Does she just say, I'm sick of it and do nothing? Does she say, I'm sick of it and I'm going on a rampage? She says, your lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental I, which by your mercy only I have attained after many, many births. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and Supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance of the universe. Text 10. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequent bodily relationships. Text 11. Devahuti continued, I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists, and I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman, and between spirit and matter. So she doesn't just stay stuck in that situation where she feels like, I'm sick of this, I can't do this anymore, I don't even like this anymore. But she turns to who she can consider the supreme person, and she says, okay, you lead now. You do this. Similarly, we hear from Arjuna in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. O Lord, I'm now confused about my duty. I've lost my composure due to miserly weakness. In this condition, right, the fallen down one, the sunken one, the depressed condition that I find myself in, I am asking you to tell me for certain what's best for me. No riddles, no games, no puzzles, no here. What if there was a banyan tree upside down and you're looking at the don't tell me for certain what's best for me. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. We see the same thing with Devahuti. So when we are in those moments where we hate everything, because, it's quite possible, it's probable, we're going to get to those situations. We can ask Krishna, I'm now depending on you. I'm coming to you. You are the greatest transcendentalist. I can't transcend anything. You can transcend everything. So please just tell me. You enlighten me as to the relationship between all of these things. You give me the proper relationship between matter and spirit, because the way I'm looking at it, the way I'm forced to see it, if I just rely on my material senses, I'm done for. If I just rely on what I can gain by looking at it with my material mind and my understanding, I'm done for. Because the way things have happened and the nature of Kali Yuga is everybody's going to oppress somebody else. Whether you are a government official or a temple president, everybody's oppressing somebody else. And we are trying to somehow get our minds right so that we don't fall into that situation. But we see it everywhere. Spiritual communities, secular communities, anywhere. We see this exerting power over one another. And it can make us feel very, very sick of this entire material situation. But Krishna always somehow shows us that there's another way, which is amazing about Krishna. Somehow or other, he's like, well, and what Devahuti knows is, I can't control the world. I can't control everything, but I can control myself. I can control where my mind goes. I can control how to use my emotions and how to use my intellect. So what she says is, let me dive into these glorious pastimes. Let me dive into these instructions. That's actually going to give solace to my heart somehow. And it does. This conversation between Kapila Dev and Devahuti is one of the most important conversations in Srimad Bhagavatam. It helps her. It gives solace. So when we see all of these things that confuse us, when we see the purports that confuse us, when we see the way people treat each other materially that confuses us, when we are the ones that have treated other people badly and our own actions are confusing us, we can turn to one another and the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam and sincerely ask for help and know that there are no coincidences. Krishna will absolutely send messages because we are never on this boat alone. And Krishna is always sending that message that don't worry. In whatever situation we find ourselves, it's always us and Krishna, right? In whatever boat we are in, don't worry, come with me. And the same people, the same forces that are causing us a disturbance will soon reestablish the spotless fame that comes with devotional service. So thank you for allowing me to give this maze of a lecture that went through a whole bunch of things. Thank you for allowing me to be with all of you. And now, of course, there's questions, which thankfully, this lecture came on a day where I don't have to homeschool.
Thank you so much for your class. Such interesting class. I have one question from the papers. Prabhupada was talking about symptoms of Kali Yuga. The 4 symptoms of Kali Yuga. Can you see on the screen?
Yeah.
So he mentioned wine, women, gambling, and slaughterhouses. So how is women symptom of Kali Yuga? Why not men? Because to me, it looks like what people complain about, that we don't respect women.
Right? Didn't we just how did we just gang up on women? What just happened?
Yeah, because it looks, for now, when you think about it, most of the crime in the society are committed by men, even in politics, in economics, everything. Why using women and not men?
Yeah. So, I think it's so important. Like I said, if we just stop there, we can feel like, what? But the very next sentence, wise rulers of all states should take lessons from Maharaj Parikshit in how to maintain peace and morality by subduing the upstarts and quarrelsome people who indulge in wine, illicit connection with women, gambling, and meat eating supplied by regularly maintained slaughterhouses. So what's interesting is that simply meat eating was not just a side effect of Kali Yuga. So simply women were not just a side effect of Kali Yuga. It's this illicit connection which breeds an oppressive nature. Right? It breeds so much violence. It breeds so much lack of truthfulness. It can breed a lack of compassion. So when we look at all of these 4 pillars, right? When we look at these 4 regulative principles, no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and anybody who has had to take initiation must memorize and rattle them off in the most anxiety-inducing moment of your life. You're not a public speaker, but now you have to recite these 4 things in front of everybody. And what if you forget one and now everybody's judging you? But so we have these 4 regulative principles, right? And they correspond to 4 pillars of religiosity and 4 pillars of society, which we need truthfulness, we need compassion, we need cleanliness, and we need mercy. And when we meet Dharma, he's standing on one leg left. Right? There's one leg left. They've already beaten down all the other legs of religiosity in society. He's got truthfulness, which I'm like, really? That was the one? Truthfulness. So when we look at this treatment, and what I think is interesting is Devahuti, when she says, please enlighten me about the relationship between man and woman and matter and spirit. She's using this relationship between man and woman as this greater analogy for this relationship between matter and spirit. So this illicit connection with women, it's actually, I feel, is a greater view on how there's this relationship between matter and spirit. You've got this idea of lording it over or being in control, right? Controlling and the controlled. But the actual controller is Purusha. But who is Adi Purusha? You've got Krishna, this supreme controller, right? And then you have material nature, Prakriti, who is female. And this is none other than this material nature ruled over by a woman, right? Completely manifested by Durga Devi. So Srimad Bhagavatam says at the beginning, you've got like nothing. You've got Krishna and nothing else. And even before there's Brahma and all before there's anything else, we need a place, we need a realm where all of these things can happen. And Krishna's like, well, let's outsource it. But he outsources it to Durga Devi. This entire material creation has a mistress. There's already somebody in charge. So what are we looking at? Is it just women? No. It's this illicit connection, which breeds this violent nature, which can breed a less compassionate mindset, which can breed a less truthful mindset. Bhagavad Gita goes on to talk about like the degradation of women, and when women are not treated properly, then the whole society falls. How? Because all of these 4 pillars of religion, this lack of mercy, all these things, you can see how. If you're not treating other people right, it leads to a breakdown of all of society. All of it. So it's not just that women should be protected. Everybody should be protected. But sometimes when you're thinking about it, you think it's like when you should be giving value to something, right? When you're giving value to, it's like, well, this person with this female body actually holds the key to creating an entire creation. More people, right? The furthering of an entire society. You should be holding that as something valuable. And so when you look at people and you're like, well, you're not willing to value that. Clearly, you're not willing to value anything. So it's not just that. It's on the back, right? Everything gets piled onto the back of the women. And when degradation of women happens, then the whole society falls. It's not about that. It's about what we should be valuing. And we used to have a youth group here in New York where we talk about Bhagavad Gita. And we would talk about different things. And we came to that section where it talks about the breakdown of society and how this can happen. And so one person that I know was saying, yeah, because they just don't make women like they used to. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm sorry, what the hell did you what does that mean? What did you just say? What do you mean they don't make them like they used to? I was like, how about this? How about if you were less concerned with what some woman was doing and more concerned on your own character? I bet you it would make a bigger change in your little universe, in the bigger universe. It would make great changes. And a lot of this is when we think about that, Krishna is trying to help Arjuna, because what Arjuna is saying, he's like, Krishna, you're Madhava, husband of the goddess of fortune. You want me to do something that's going to cause a breakdown of all society. Like Arjuna's arguing with his friend. He's like, look, you've said you're the supreme person. How can you give me a task that's going to leave a whole bunch of widows, which you just said would cause a breakdown of all society? Nobody to look after them. And you know what happens when no one looks after them. There are people already ready and willing to take advantage of the situation. That's been happening since time immemorial. That's a symptom of the material world. You look back, and through all kinds of, like, it doesn't matter which age, Satya Yuga, like, it doesn't matter, nor does it matter which realm you were in. There are people all over. Someone comes, and then a woman comes, and then they say, I've been mistreated, horribly tortured, abused, all unmentionable things. And then somebody, now a whole army of people, loads of people, want to do something about it. So a symptom of this material world is that there have been horrible things happening to people, committed by other people. But now we're trying to get an idea of what should be valued. Our character, our integrity, these things should be valued. And instead they're not. It's not just women, it's this illicit connection. And what is illicit? It's this idea, looking at this person. You're there meant for my enjoyment. I know somebody, and they were accused of abusing their wife. And they didn't say, no, I didn't abuse her. What they said was, how could it be abuse? She's my wife. And that was telling. Like, that was telling of the mindset. Right? So it doesn't just mean, oh, this is your wife, now nothing is illicit. It means there's this mindset of, how could it be abuse? This is my wife. I have rights. Like, what? You do not have the right to abuse somebody else. It doesn't matter what your connection with them is. It doesn't give you that's not how this works. So it's this mindset, and it's the same mindset that determines who is a real renunciate and who is a fake renunciate. Right? It's here.
Thank you. We have a question from Sadev, Prabhu, please. Sadev.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Mother Acyuta Devi. That was a very, very beautiful, powerful, insightful class. I've heard from a couple of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, and they all say that Srila Prabhupada was such an amazing spiritual master that he speaks once. Like, if you listen to just one lecture of Srila Prabhupada, he touches on every aspect of devotional service. And that's what I find in this class today. Even though it's just one text you spoke on, but you spoke on so many diverse, essential things we need to know in devotional service. So thank you so much. And especially, it's like, I don't know whether because of me or whatever, but Krishna made you speak the way you spoke, and Krishna made me listen to this class because it has answered so many questions I have had, particularly this very morning, because certain things have taken place this morning, and I was wondering, why would Krishna allow things like that to take place? But I've had lots of answers from all those questions from this class. So thank you. Now, I still have one more question from the purport. Srila Prabhupada started the purport by saying that devotees of the Lord are the wisest people in the world. Not just wise, but wisest. And I looked up the definition of the word wise, and also the antonyms, the opposites of wise.
Wow.
The wisest man in the world is the devotee of the Lord. The opposites of wise is stupid, silly, foolish. Now, if someone is not wise, then he must be either silly, stupid, or foolish. And I don't know if there is any word in between foolish and wise. And if devotees are the wisest people in the world, and we look at the definition of wise, and we do not find these characteristics in devotees. Then my question is Srila Prabhupada saying this to make us feel good of ourselves? Because everybody wants to be seen as the wise or the wisest person, or we haven't yet become devotees. That is why we are not wise. Because looking at some of the things devotees do and say sometimes, like treating people based on creed, skin, finance, like education background, so many material backgrounds come into play when we're dealing with devotees. Like the way I would talk to you may be different from the way I would talk to somebody like, say, Madhav Raj Taruni, or the way I talk to you may be different from the way I talk to Kusha Prabhu, because he's male and you are female, because she is white and you are black. And we're supposed to rise above all these things because we are the wisest, but we are still not there. So is it because we haven't been there yet, and therefore we are not yet devotees? Or there is something missing somewhere? Please help.
Yeah, I think that these we do get into trouble when we start categorizing things on a material aspect, right? And it's similarly problematic for the verse where they say that, a devotee is above all like transgressions and offenses, right? And if a devotee seemingly commits some offense that should seem outward, but internally we should understand that the devotees have transcended all of those actions, right? So then that can seem, it's like, but then what about the things that devotees do? And I think that we have to, what I like is this. For the definition of wise, right, it says having or showing experience, knowledge, and good judgment. Good judgment. And I think that that is something that we often forget. We also have to exercise good judgment. Srila Prabhupada was always encouraging people to exercise good judgment. So we use the blanket statement, devotees, but we also have to have good judgment. Who is a devotee and who is simply a person who knows the name Krishna? And we have to really examine that sometimes devotees are just people who happen to know about Krishna. And they still have all the hang-ups and the baggage and the karmic weight that comes with all of these bodies that we've traversed. And they're just people that happen to know about Krishna. And then there are some people where you think, oh no, but they're devotee. You can actively see how they have worked to rise above all of the things. But those people also usually have very good judgment. So when we see the things that confuse us and the people making the distinctions and all of these things, then we also have to exercise our good judgment as devotees, as wise people, to know, okay, this is a devotee of the Lord, and this is also a devotee of the Lord because they have a Paramatma. Okay, fine. But also, maybe they're not listening to their Paramatma right now. And okay. And sometimes then we have to use our good judgment to know when to cling towards the people and when to separate from them. When to allow our lives to go in their separate ways so as not to disturb my own internal mood with my Paramatma. So yeah, I see it all the time, and I have to remind myself and those around me that sometimes devotees are also just people. And so I don't think that Srila Prabhupada was just saying this just to make us feel good, but he's actually looking at, but no, who is real devotee? Who is really showing based on our character, based on our integrity, as my Guru Maharaj always likes to point out. He's like, a Vaishnav, he said, doesn't depend on the tilak or the dhoti or the kantimala or anything. It doesn't depend on any of that. It depends on our character. And our character and our integrity often have something to do with what we do, how we act, how we conduct ourselves, especially when we come in contact with difficult situations. My Guru Maharaj quotes a line from Krishna book. And it is a line that Srila Prabhupada writes, and he says he has kept it all of his life. It's one of his favorite lines. And
I don't see you still in class.
so he says that Srila Prabhupada says, a person's greatness must be estimated by one's ability to tolerate provoking situations. You know, it sounds wonderful when my Guru Maharaj says it. When I think about what the practicality of that means, I hate it. But it is said, a person's greatness must be estimated by one's ability to tolerate provoking situations. So my Guru Maharaj says that a person's character, that integrity, who they are as a devotee, comes to light when those provoking situations happen. How do we conduct ourselves? Do we look like Kunti or do we look like Kamsa when it happens? Do we like what's our go-to? What's our reaction? And then we can gauge our own progress based on those reactions. Because the test will come, the provoking situations are going to come. That's a material world thing. And likewise, this was not given in a time when, things were happy and everything was fine. This line was written in response to Lord Vishnu being kicked in the chest by Bhrigu Muni. That's a provoking situation. If somebody came up in your bedroom while you were just hanging out with your people, in the most intimate part of your house, let alone the fact that they got into your house, but they came into your bedroom and forcibly kicked you in the chest, said nothing. How do we handle that? That shows our character. That shows the integrity of a real devotee. Lord Vishnu said, "Oh my goodness, I hope you didn't hurt your foot." Lakshmi was outraged. I'm in her camp. I was also equally outraged. Like, what is happening? Especially as a person who has probably cleaned said house. You come up in here and this is an intimate moment. She's just sitting with the Lord of her life. And now he's being abused. Like, what is this? And instead he's let me massage your feet. Now also he curbs the pride of Bhrigu Muni by massaging his foot, all these things. But this is intense. And what he says is, and no one in the history of ever will forget this. I will bear this mark on my chest forever. That's how dear the Brahmins are to me. Now, the Lord has the wherewithal to do this because he's above the abuse. He's so strong that he knows there's nobody that can. Lakshmi Devi, she felt like there should be some retaliation. And so she curses the Brahmins, all of them. I'll never go to your houses. You'll always look poor. And then what she does is she leaves Vaikuntha. Now, this one act has actually caused marital issues between the divine couple. Because now she says to him, but the chest is where I live. You weren't even willing to protect my place? He says, but Devi, nothing happened. It's fine. No. And if you think somehow that now I'm wrong for having this anger, then I should get free of this anger. Which means I have to go somewhere and do penance. I can't stay here. She needs space. She goes and takes it. What I find interesting is, now one would think the Lord has transcended all of these material feelings, right? Bhrigu Muni comes and kicks him in the chest. He has no flinch. Everything's fine. But when his lady leaves, he's completely crestfallen and depressed. Narada Muni comes, he says, my Lord, what's happening? He says, I can't even maintain my life here. What is left for me? There's no Lakshmi, no abundance. What joy is here for me? without her. I don't even want to be here anymore. And he leaves. Vaikuntha is empty. This is judgment. We don't abandon our discrimination when we come in contact with Krishna consciousness. And we see that even the Lord doesn't act the same with everybody, even though he says, I'm impartial, right? I act equally toward everyone. What he means is he's a mirror and he's going to reciprocate with everyone. So Bhrigu Muni had an intellectual side. That rising above, that transcendentalist behavior was a good reciprocation for Bhrigu Muni, because Bhrigu Muni was on that wavelength. But how did he reciprocate with his wife? She was very emotional. The Lord reciprocated emotionally. And there are whole pastimes that come from that emotional behavior. So what does this wiseness mean? This true knowledge is this good judgment. Being able to also recognize that the Lord is going to reciprocate with people in kind, and that we can also reciprocate with people in kind, which means sometimes we distance ourselves for our own spiritual benefits. And then sometimes it's, yes, we are going to relate with different devotees differently. That's just good judgment. But it should be on the basis of how they are interacting with us, the basis of our character, the basis of their character, the basis of the nature of our souls. And hopefully, as we continue to progress in our Krishna consciousness, it will be less simply based on judging a book by its cover, or thinking a fish is foolish because it does not walk on land. Right? They say if you try to judge a fish by how it acts outside of water, we'll always think the fish is stupid or foolish. But it has nothing to do with that. It's about our internal characteristics. It's about the intrinsic nature that everybody comes with. So if you see someone with a fiery nature and you tell them, but the only way to progress in spiritual life is to be a meek and timid Brahmin, that person feels like there's no hope for them. If we acknowledge that there is room for everything in Krishna consciousness, that passionate fighting spirit, there are Kshatriyas who are the greatest devotees. Because that it doesn't have to do with you being smart according to somebody else's calculation. It's about acting according to what is true, according to your character, your integrity, and your nature, and keeping Krishna as an anchor through all of it. Then we have so many more ways for people to become Krishna conscious, to perfect their lives. But we see between Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish, Durvasa Muni is thinking, I'm a sage. That's the only way to progress. This guy is just a householder. He's a warrior. What is he doing? How can he claim to be a great devotee? And he got himself into a lot of trouble because of it. So we have to use that good judgment that is part of being wise. That good judgment that our Paramatma is giving us, that, okay, some devotees are simply people who have just heard about Krishna. And then there are some people who really speak to us. And we can cling to those people. Like, I can get down with that tribe, no problem. But we can also know that, okay, some people are finding the path to perfection through great meditation. But some people are finding the path of perfection as being always busy in service. This was Yashodarani. Srila Prabhupada says our samadhi should be following Yashodarani, always busy. Maybe she wasn't sitting chanting 16 rounds a day. She wasn't chanting any rounds. It didn't matter. That wasn't the path of perfection for the Vaishyas at that time. She was always busy. From the moment she got up till the moment she went to sleep, she was always busy, but always also singing the glories of Sri Krishna. So she was chanting more than any of us, because she's singing songs about her child. talking to her child, thinking about her child. Oh, what does Lala need? Oh, but he's only 3. Oh, but if I don't do this, what's going to happen? Oh, and he's so restless. And he's just like those monkeys. And I have to make sure that I keep him sequestered. Otherwise, he's going to call in the monkeys. But she's always busy. Srila Prabhupada says this is our samadhi. Always busy. So if you can't sit in one place and just like Haridas Thakur and 300,000 names, okay. That's not the definition of what it means to be the greatest devotee or what it means to be infinitely wise. It means we are busy in our Krishna consciousness. And that takes an unlimited number of forms.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the answer.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Sure, one more. Let's do it.
It's not in relation to this class, but in relation to Jesus and Judas Iscariot. You know, the guy that betrayed Jesus before he was killed. So when Christians say that Jesus died for their sins, then they condemn Judas Iscariot. So I was arguing with someone in Nigeria lately. I said, you people should be grateful to Judas for betraying Jesus. Because without betraying Jesus, he wouldn't die and wash away your sins. So they were like, what are you talking about? I said, yes. So my question is Judas right? Or did he help Jesus to fulfill his mission by betraying him? Or is he part of the Kali Yuga?
Yeah, isn't that something? There's actually a whole religious debate going on about that right now. They're making documentaries about it. They're doing all kinds of things, trying to figure out, like, Judas, what the heck happened with you, bro? Like, one day we were good, and the next day, what happened to you? So as far as, is Judas right or wrong? You know, I feel like that takes such greater spiritual vision. What I do see is Jesus knew what he signed up for before he did it. Just the same way as we have astrologers here foretelling that Parikshit Maharaj is going to be cursed to be bit by a snake bird, and he's going to hear Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days, right? And it's going to bring about this greatest thing. But now we can easily also look at Shringi. Was he wrong? Was he just an 8-year-old boy? Was he just an immature sage? Should this have happened? Same way, like, you know, like this whole thing, a calamity occurs and we want to blame someone because there's so many feelings and we don't know where to put them, and being angry is easier than actually dealing with the situation at hand, right? That's the easier emotion, easier than grief. So it's easy to want to be angry at the carriers of karma. Oh, I don't like that one. Are we, and you know, when it comes to is Judas wrong or right, I feel like the bigger question is what happens when that comes upon us? Do we take out our anger on the carriers of our karma, the instruments of our karma, or do we do what all great souls have done afterward and think, now what do I do with this? What do I do with this situation that has been given to me? But Jesus, as far as I know, from the moment that Shakti Avesh avatar decides to take this particular avatar, they know what the mission is. They know all that it entails, and they sign up for it. So Jesus already knew the betrayal was going to happen, the crucifixion is going to happen. He knows. That's what he signed up for.
Yeah, then the question is, why do we condemn Judas, who played a role in fulfilling his mission? The same thing with Shringi. Yeah. Why do we condemn them when they play an important role for bigger things to come upon the world?
Because I mean, that's the nature of us souls, isn't it? Something happens to us and we're like, well, if you were more careful, this wouldn't have happened to me. And that's actually just the instrument of our karma. That's the nature of all of us, to immediately want to lash out outward, you know? The problem is out there. The problem can't be here. My mom said when she first read Bhagavad Gita and they heard that, all of this, it's, this previous accumulated karma. And so she's like, whoa, 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 you telling me I asked for this? I did this? I can't even blame anybody else? The blaming somebody else makes us feel a lot better about the karma that gets heaped up upon us. There's a very long version of what happened. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, one time he goes to Srila Prabhupada and he says, there's racism in your society. He says, there's a lot of issues here. And people are not treating me well. And I'm seeing all kinds of things. And there's actually a long answer. But sometimes people shorten the answer to, Srila Prabhupada says something paraphrased to, do not be angry with the instrument of your karma. And then they stop, as though that's all Srila Prabhupada said. It's not all he said. He said, don't be angry with the instrument of your karma. He says, when they're treating you this way, right? That might be that because they're setting up more karma for themselves. No doubt, there was some karma that you had to have been treated this way. But how you react also sets up your karma. Don't let their karma become your karma, is how he left it. So when we have that urge, and it does come upon us, that urge to want to retaliate and lash out and lash back, Srila Prabhupada, I think of him saying, don't let their karma become your karma, because of course, by committing these actions, they're setting up a karma for themselves. Because Judas, he was tormented in mind, hangs himself. This is tormenting. We can't think that, okay, Judas did this and then nothing ever happened, right? It's immediate, the karma. Like we see the balance, it evens out real fast. Somehow along the way, Judas is tormented and he goes through a hole, and then he forfeits his own life, which also then comes with more karma. So undoubtedly, the people who do these things, they are setting up a karma for themselves. But in dwelling on those situations, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj says, when we dwell on these situations and we are reliving all of those negative things, we're simply just keeping ourselves steeped in that karma. We're reliving it and reliving the trauma and building that trauma and putting it back on ourselves again. He says we can get out of that cycle. That cycle of samsara, this burning fire of existence, is not just out there, it's also in here, in here. So the more that we dwell on that, the more that we keep ourselves in those situations, we have much more possibility of allowing those people's karma to become our karma. Because then laws of the world say the only way for me to get over this and get through this is now to perpetuate that same behavior on you or someone else. And this is how the abused becomes the abuser. We don't want this. So should we condemn Judas? I like to think that it's out of a grief and a love that they are trying to condemn Judas in order to somehow cling to all of what Jesus was. But the people closest to Jesus kind of didn't have time for all of that, right? They didn't have time. They were too busy making preparations. They were too busy cleaning up whatever happened. They were too busy doing these things, dealing with the aftermath. They're too busy to go condemn. Parikshit Maharaj is too busy to condemn Shringi. He's too busy figuring out, okay, what do I do now? So when I see these things happen, and when I even feel the injustices come upon me, rather than spending my time trying to condemn everybody else, I want to be too busy figuring out how to deal with this now. I want to be too busy finding the blessing that is somewhere hidden in this situation. I need to go and put my energy in that section. Because if I don't, I'll stay stuck.
Thank you. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hare Krishna, I see, sorry, I want to share this. If,
Okay,
Please.
go on, please. Go on, Sadev.
okay. Well, this is what Christ said in Luke 17, verse 1. It says, Jesus said to his disciples, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, but woe to anyone through whom they come. It would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. So watch yourselves. So in other words, Christ was saying that even though he knows that he's going to be crucified, but woe betides whoever makes himself the means for this to take place. So that's what I know about it. Hare Krishna.
Absolutely. And there is always universal retaliation. And that's what I try to, I talk about it with my nephews, and whenever things happen, we're like, don't think no one escapes from material nature.
No.
Nobody escapes. Nobody escapes from the laws of karma. If we've seen anything, there is no escape. You might think you escaped, you get this life, whatever it is, you get a next life, there's no escape. So, we don't always have to take the matters into our own hands, but what we do have to do is focus on us. What do we do now? Do we get caught up in becoming an agent of harsh karma for somebody else? Is that what we want? Because this action and reaction is going to keep occurring. When we keep creating that karma for somebody else, then that karma keeps it keeps on doing this thing. And that's what Krishna is saying. Cut this knot of karmic reaction. Cut it. And rise above that. But it's only through taking shelter. Only through those moments of surrender. Only through those moments where we say, you know what, I don't have it. I don't have the wherewithal or the knowledge. I'm not so wise as to be able to know who to save and whom to condemn. My Lord, you show me what's best for me. You take the reins, you walk the path, and then I'll follow you, because otherwise I'm lost.
Okay, we have two hands up. First,
Yes.
Harachakra Prabhu, please. Then after him, Sriman Viraha Prabhu. Harachakra, you have the floor, please. If you're not ready, okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna
Krishna.
Prabhu, can hear you.
I'm sorry that my video is not on, because where I am, I can't show it. Yeah, I just wanted to just give a little bit contribution to what Sadev just said, in contribution to the question that Kusha Prabhu asked. I remember Shlakeshna Prad once answered a similar question. And what he said was that, he said, if your karma depicts that you get a dirty slap at a particular moment, when the time comes, you get the slap anyway. But what nature arranges is that nature looks around. Whoever is around your vicinity who is desiring to slap somebody. So by that person's desire, the desire will bring you and him together. Something happens, he fulfills his desire, and you fulfill your karma. So the person slaps you, and if you retaliate, it doesn't balance the slap he gave you. Guru Maharaj was saying it, that when the person slaps you and you retaliate the slap, it doesn't balance the slap he gave you. Because the slap he gave you was fulfillment of your karma. Now, if you retaliate, if you give him another slap, if you give him a slap in return, you are sowing another karma to come and reap. And that is why when Jesus was asked that how many times should I forgive my brother, he said 77 times, 7 times. So in Matthew chapter 18, verse 7, like Saturday read, Matthew chapter 18, verse 7, he says that woe unto the world because of offenses or sins. But these offenses or sins, no matter what you do, they will come anyway. But woe unto you who gives yourself the chance for that offense to come through. It's better you were not even born. So the idea is, some people saying that was Judas wrong or not, whether to betray Jesus. Yeah, the thing is, the Bible itself answers that question, that he did the wrong thing and that he will suffer for it. And like Acyuta was explaining, that some immediate karma was shown. Judas had to commit suicide. But actually, that suicide does not actually even balance the reaction that he's supposed to get. So, well, whatever, that's why as Vaishnavas, I guess we need to be really, really careful with each other. Because someone does things, it doesn't necessarily mean that the action we take counteracts whatever the person has done to us. Our karma depicts that we suffer that thing at a particular moment, and when it comes to us, then we should learn how to deal with it. I mean, sincerely from our heart, instead of going to sow another karma. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we even see, you know, Maharaj Janmejaya, he gets mad at all the snakes. A snake bird killed my father, let's kill all the snakes. And the Brahmins finally are like, what are you doing? This is not how we raised you to act. This is not how these godly people act. It's not just, you know, eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. This is not what we were doing. Your father knew, he'd already made peace with that situation. He understood this was his karma. He wasn't lashing out, but they're like, no, kill all the snakes, you know? And they stopped. They were able to bring him back from that wanting to retaliate. So we do see it in spiritual circles. It's not just that, oh, you know, this happened and it was in the Bible and then but it never happened to these pure devotees. It did. And then Maharaj Janmejaya had to do his own soul searching, and he heard so many wonderful, wonderful teachings because of it. But it's because these moments really make you do some soul searching. When these horrible things happen and you feel like there is no way to retaliate, you feel so powerless, it brings you to a moment where you have to really search your soul. And I pray that we follow in their footsteps and we find spiritual solutions when we have to search our soul.
Thank you, Prabhu. Sriman Vrachaya, please, you have the floor.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. My respectful obeisances for everybody. Thank you, Mother Acyuta. Just a quick question, because hearing this, what we have been saying, which is very nice to hear, and also it's true, I'm not disputing what you're saying, but people hearing this might think that devotees are. That's the question I want to ask. Are devotees pacifists? And we know that Krishna didn't tell Arjuna to drop his bow and not fight. So where do we strike the balance? When you must act to prevent injustice, and when you have to accept that this is, okay, my karma. So we have to see where do we draw the line between pacifism and being proactive in a very, serious sense. I mean, like Arjuna took up the balance and he fought. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it takes a huge amount of prayer. We somehow think that if we pray now, Krishna said one thing long time ago, and he won't be speaking to us. Are devotees pacifists? I think, it depends on what helps us to serve. Because Krishna, you can't say he was a pacifist. He was killing demons left and right since the day he was born. 3 days old, he killed Putana. If we look at our Shastra and our scriptures, Krishna's killing demons left and right, all of them. Hundreds of thousands of people on battlefields at a time. They said he engaged in battle with Jarasandha 17, 18 times just because, and didn't defeat him, because he wanted to rid the world of all of these, like mass exodus of all of these ruling kings who were abusing other people. So, are we pacifists? I don't think so. I think that we have to look at the situations and see how best to serve. 2 years ago, there's like big uproar here in America, in New York, in all kinds of different places, everywhere, all across the country of the United States, big uproars. And it was due to what could be termed bodily designations. I had devotees tell me at that time, you shouldn't be afraid or upset or whatever, because, you should just understand that you're not this body. And I had people tell me that, look, I hear this whole thing about Black Lives Matter, but really what we should be looking at is cow protection. And as a devotee, lifelong, I thought to myself, did you just tell me that the cows' lives, which undoubtedly they do matter, but did you just tell me that they mattered more than mine? The one that I'm talking to you, telling you, as a devotee, I just need some spiritual comfort, a friend, just to say, I understand what you're going through. I didn't ask you to do anything. I just said, I understand what you're going through. And to feel that compassionate nature for another living entity who's talking to you on this spiritual journey, just the same way you are. And you told me I need to focus more on the cows. Well, I get it, but also Vasudev, like Kamsa was killing cows left and right, trying to get Krishna to appear, but Vasudev had the wherewithal to say, wait, let's protect my wife. Right? He had the wherewithal to say that. And did it mean that he engaged with Kamsa right then there on a battlefield? No, but he was clever about it. Wise, good judgment. So we have to use our good judgment. Not every situation will call for us to necessarily do something. Sometimes just our very presence is enough. Sometimes just our presence, just us sincerely and authentically saying, you know what, as a spiritual person, I do struggle with how to deal with this. But then also, there will be more than enough people always willing to take up the harsher, intense roads. But some people, truly, in their minds and in their hearts, they are built more like warriors. So I don't think that the path of a devotee can be said to be pacifist or non-pacifist, because there are so many levels of devotees. There are so many paths for devotees. There are Brahmin devotees and Kshatriya devotees and Vaishya devotees and Shudra devotees, and everybody in Kali Yuga is no better than a Shudra, but we know sometimes you have those internal qualities. And so Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he said that we're all spiritual warriors. But he understood that sometimes the way to combat some of these material things is to fight the spiritual fight. We have to fight the spiritual fight. People are battling things on a heart deep level. So more than just this one problem or that one problem, right? Srila Prabhupada, he simplifies. There's one verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, not too far from this one. And in the purport, he says, the hunger problem and the war problem and the violence problem, all of these things. And he tells about how they can be mitigated and lessened with spiritual solutions. But the idea when he says, oh, the hunger problem, like this and that, like it's almost simplified. Simple. But in Srila Prabhupada's estimation, looking at it with these spiritual solutions, it was much more simple than we are making it out to be. Because he was acting from a place of transcendentalism, trying to rise people above these things that create all of these designations. You are my enemy and you are my friend. He's saying Prahlad Maharaj has been speaking this for millions of years. All of these problems are coming looking at you are my enemy and you are my friend. And now I have to act based on that. And he's saying, everybody is a soul. with a Paramatma, a Krishna is there, not just for that person, but also keeping an eye out. How does my person act in this situation? So we have to look at how we can best serve. Sometimes, if we look at a situation and our inaction and our inability to speak up and at least say, but what would Krishna want in this situation? Sometimes not saying that can be a bigger disservice. Sometimes not acknowledging the issue can be such a huge disservice to somebody. So sometimes the best way we can serve is actually to say, to stand up and acknowledge, no, this is a problem. That was not correct. That wasn't fair. Now, what to do about that takes much more. But sometimes standing up and saying, this wasn't right. That wasn't okay. But also don't get stuck there. We have to constantly pray to Krishna, okay, Lord, don't let me get stuck here. Because that's just one more entangling knot that keeps me tied up in this place. Ultimately, what I want to do is get out of this place, get out of this cycle, and take as many friends with me as possible. So for Jesus, it was turn the other cheek. How millions of times keep turning the other cheek. Because what Jesus was also seeing was there's a greater material nature that is handling all of this. All the things you think will not be handled, they will be handled. And what he was also seeing was you have a divine protection. So there have been devotees who have been persecuted. Devotees in areas in Russia and in Lithuania and all kinds of places where at the beginnings of this movement, they gave their lives. They were persecuted horribly. But in their minds, they knew they were firm and they had faith in the divine protection that they were under. Does this mean that we all decide that martyrdom is the only way? No. The thing about Krishna consciousness is that there are so many unlimited ways to serve and love Krishna. And it doesn't mean that the person who had to protect themselves and stayed hidden in a corner is less than the person who died in a jail being persecuted by the government. It's not less or greater. It's just different. And sometimes we have to know what our capacities are. So if it is not in our capacity to be able to fight all the way through, okay, that's fine. We have to be really honest and sincere with ourselves and with Krishna. And it doesn't mean that these things don't hurt when they happen, because they do hurt. Vidura was rudely treated. It hurt. Kunti Devi found herself in despair all the time and it hurt. She cried, called out to Krishna. And she decided to fight in the different ways that she thought she was able. So at some points, when they were ousted from their kingdom, she told her sons, we're not going back. I'm not putting myself in that situation again, nor am I putting you in that situation again. Krishna has given us a way out and saved our lives. Now we stay over here. That's it. So can we say, oh, Kunti Devi, she was weak. She should have gone back and stormed the castle. No, she's doing what she could do to the best of her abilities, spiritually, materially, all of the above. So we have to look at ourselves and what we are capable of. And we have to really have faith in that divine protection. And we have to have real faith that this material nature is actually ruling things. Which means that nobody else gets away with anything, but neither do we. But Krishna says, when you come under my protection, then I tell material nature to lighten up. I lessen that hold that material nature has over you, and you come under my protection. I take personal control of your life. That's the difference between devotee and non-devotee. Krishna says, I'm not really partial to anybody, but, however, if you've decided that you are under my shelter, then I take complete control and I enter into those activities and I take control of what's happening to you now. I take control over those actions. You're not just out there on your own or seemingly on your own. But if you feel like you're the controller, you want to feel like you're out there on your own, Krishna will He will remove himself so much so that you feel like you're on your own, even though we never are. And so Uttara also asks the same question. She says, I've heard so much about devotees. I've heard so much about how Krishna interacts and doesn't interact, or how he just decides to choose, but is it all equal? How? What? And it all comes down to, what is our desire? Krishna's reciprocating. What is our desire? What's really in our hearts? So we can't cheat a cheater. He's going to know what is really within our hearts, and he's going to reciprocate with that. So we can look at the ways in which we can serve. And sometimes it does such a huge disservice to pretend like things aren't happening, to pretend like devotees are not facing troubles. And sometimes the best thing we can do is to say, you know what? Well, maybe we gather over here and we give strength to one another. Maybe we can't overthrow whatever's happening over here, but we can gather in our small numbers here and hear from one another, be there for one another, and say, even between ourselves, this is not cool. So what do? How do we get out of this situation? But once and for all, not just making the next 5 minutes better. How do we make our whole spiritual lives better? How do we find a way to get out of this situation all together? So I kind of feel like there's no one set answer, because there's no one set situation. This material world is filled with things. It's unlimited. As part and parcel of Krishna's mercy, it is as unlimited as these unlimited desires. And there are unlimited situations happening. Somewhere somebody is being oppressed, and somewhere someone is doing the oppressing. So we have to look at each situation and think, but how do I best serve in a Krishna conscious way? Not just making the situation better for them for the next 5 minutes, but how do I best serve in a situation where we can help each other get out of this once and for all? So we're not pacifists, we're not activists, we are servitors. Trying to think of the best way to serve, and if that means we speak on those things, then we speak on those things. And if that means that we only speak on those things with the people we trust, then we speak on those things with the people we trust, and we try and find answers with each other, for each other. I really, really hope and pray that that was a suitable answer.
Thank you for a wonderful lecture today. 2 hours, 15 minutes. We'd like to rest.
I think there was one more person, but they might be gone now. There's one more person that looked like they were raising a hand, but on camera.
Okay, really? Please, if you have a question, kindly raise your hand, and then you are free to unmute yourself and ask the question, please. Whoever it is.
Yes, actually, my obeisances to all, especially Mother Acyuta. It's the first time hearing you speak physically. I'm so glad to hear this wonderful nectar flowing from your lotus mouth. Yeah, the question of Judas, we have a similar situation in Vasudev Datta praying to the Lord to put all the sins of people on him, for everybody to go to spiritual world, and he goes to hell. Like you rightly said, Jesus knew what was actually going to happen when he's here on the planet. And somebody will have to cause his death for the whole world to be saved. And he did actually cause his death, and that he has saved the whole world. So what will be the situation of Judas?
You know what's interesting? When we think about it, no one has a hard time condemning the Hiranyakashipus. Right? Everybody's like, no, Hiranyakashipu, easily condemnable. He was attacking the kids. That's a problem. But everybody forgets that originally Hiranyakashipu was an eternal doorkeeper in Vaikuntha. Okay, this is inspirational, right? We easily forget that Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha and Shishupal Dantavakra and Ravana and Kumbhakarna, their actual natures were that they were servants. Servants who had made a mistake. And we can easily, and a lot of us, I know myself included, I often forget that. Especially when I'm, using them as an analogy for a bad government. And then I'm like, yes, down with all the, injustices and take it all. It's all down. But we are seeing one snapshot of a very much larger karmic conversation. My brother often likes to point that out, right? It's like you get parents and you have two kids and one kid slaps the other kid and then the other kid is crying. And then you think, well, the good thing to do as a parent is to chastise the child that slapped the other child. But what we didn't see was the way the child who is now crying was torturing that other kid for the last hour, as kids do. I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, and doing all the things that annoy this child to the point where now what we did see was that child reared back and slapped the other kid. We are missing the karmic conversation. And what I love about Srimad Bhagavatam is it gives a bigger karmic conversation. What I'm missing is who was Judas really? Because now we have it, Jesus' personal definition, Son of God, no problem. We have the definition of who Jesus was, this great empowered guru for the whole world. But who was Judas really? I'm missing that part of the conversation. So it's so difficult for me to just say, that person's bad. I'm missing some information. And I have to remind myself that I'm missing information with everybody. I'm missing that karmic information with so many people, with devotees who I'm interacting with outsiders, with people who don't know Krishna, with politicians that I decide to dislike. I'm missing all that information. Who are they really? We can think Shankaracharya came and started preaching this impersonalist philosophy, right? God has no form. Don't worry about it. Let's merge into the light. Let's focus on that. And we can easily feel like we can condemn Shankaracharya and all of the impersonalists that come to follow. Who was Shankaracharya really? This is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva says, he says, I get the most thankless task. He's like, I've served my Lord faithfully, and what does he ask me to do? Be condemned for the rest of time by the people that I want to associate with most? I'm actively having to distance myself from true devotees by following the order of my Lord. But my Lord said, they're getting out of hand. Go confuse them. Go do something. And while you're doing that, be merciful to all the people that no one wants to be merciful to. Lord Shiva says, okay, if that's what you want. Lord Shiva is looking for ways to serve. So the people that we think to condemn, I just want to know, but who are they really? Because there's something bigger going on here. There's facts and personalities that I'm missing out on. And that I'm always trying to find ways to make my mind go back to what's really important. And what's really important is this Krishna consciousness and what I can do with it. And so in bringing my mind back to those situations, I try and bring myself back to, wait, I almost got caught. I almost started to forget that this Krishna consciousness, that's what was most important. I almost forgot that whether Judas would have succeeded or not, whether any of that stuff, if I got caught up in just condemning Judas, I would have missed the whole point. And the whole point is Jesus saying, I'm doing all of this for you. Just continue to be God conscious and don't get caught up in the whole foray of blaming and accepting blame and all this. Don't get caught up in it. I'm doing all of this just so that you don't get caught up in it. And then we're like, cool, let me get caught up in this. Just, I got it. I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but let me just get caught up in this thing right here. And he's like, no, the point is, don't get caught up in this. And you know, the way Jesus is, he's like, I'd gladly do it again. I would do it again. Just to remind you not to get caught up in this whole situation. Right? Everybody's like, but Judas. He's like, don't worry about Judas. I got it. I chose this. And in the midst of crucifixion, I chose this. Don't worry about them. They don't even know what they're doing. It's fine. Haridas Thakur beaten in 22 marketplaces. No one survives that. And the whole time he's begging Mahaprabhu, don't, it's fine. Don't, these people are doing a job that is delegated by karma, ultimately by you, my Lord. So don't take out your anger on these people. And Mahaprabhu says later, I couldn't even avenge you. My own hands were tied because of your compassionate, loving nature. So I did the only thing I could do, and I took that on my back. And he's like, don't believe me? Moves his chutter. He's got scars from something that happened before he was born. Because Haridas is old. From something that happened before Mahaprabhu was even born. He's got scars that he wears because this is what he does for his devotee. And he's just saying, just don't get caught up in all the other stuff. And even still, devotees then, they're like, oh, but the Muslims. He's like, don't get caught up in it. Don't get stuck there. And that's Srila Prabhupada, I think, is the teaching to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, you know, don't get caught there. Don't let this karma thing catch you. And what he knew about him, he's like, you've got so many more places to go. Don't get caught there. Don't let it stop you. You've got way too far to go for that. So, I hope that answered.
You speak Nigerian English. Don't let this karma thing catch you.
Don't let it catch you. Run away.
Thank you
So
so
all
much.
glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. All glories to Jesus Christ. Don't let it catch you.
All glories to His Holiness. Radhanath Maharaj ki jai.
Thank you so much. So we ask all devotees to kindly unmute
Please,
yourselves.
I know we've spent so much time.
So a question?
Kusha Prabhu, please.
Go on, please.
Yeah, no, I understood the question. I'm pleading with all the devotees. The last update we had on His Holiness Japataka Maharaj yesterday was that he's still not doing well. So we're asking all the devotees to remember Maharaj in your puja, your kirtans, your japa, in your seva, whatever you're doing. Remember Maharaj. He doesn't need to be here, but we need him more than ever. So we pray to Guru Krishna to keep him well and keep him here for our own good. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So we ask all devotees to kindly unmute yourselves when you chant Hare Krishna to Mother for coming, please. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare
Rama,
Rama.
Hare
Hare Hare. Acyuta Gopi Maharaj. Hare Hare.
Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,